All right, so St. Louis Representative Cori Bush was recently asked about whether or not she would support a 2024 Joe Biden re-election bid, and short little clip here, but her response I think was absolutely hilarious. So let's just go ahead and watch this, and then I'll try to put it a little bit more in context for you guys.
Do you want to see Joe Biden run for a second term?
She's got to go.
Yeah,
That's an easy question. It's not going to take long. Do you want to see Joe Biden run?
I don't want to answer that question because we have not, I don't want to answer that question.
Okay.
He's the president and he has the right to run for a second term. Absolutely. But
right
I don't want to, I'd rather you not do that answer.
You got like 2 minutes to be in the car.
Yeah, I know. I got to get to the.
Well, thanks very much.
The other thing.
Do you want to see?
Okay, so apparently she had an interview like across town 20 minutes after this and she had to go to it. But listen, the real reason she didn't want to answer this question is because the answer is no, okay? She doesn't want to face a lot of the potential political backlash from the Democratic establishment, from Joe Biden himself, for coming out and openly saying that she doesn't support a 2024 bid. Now, there's a number of different things you could say about that. Number one, I do appreciate the fact, at least at some level, that she wasn't doing what other so-called progressive lawmakers like Representative Ro Khanna here, who I usually do agree with on most policy priorities, but in terms of strategy, her response there was infinitely better than things that we have heard from people like Ro Khanna. So just as a reminder here from the Hill, Ro Khanna says Democrats need to be disciplined. You don't get anywhere by attacking Biden. So not only has Ro Khanna been coming out and defending Joe Biden's prospects in 2024, even though they're looking absolutely disastrous, but he's been literally attacking leftists who have been critical of the Biden administration, and also, wrote that op-ed a couple months ago saying that the problems with Build Back Better was that we didn't give in to Manchin's demands sooner than we did. So in terms of strategy, Ro Khanna has been absolutely bombing recently, but Cori Bush here, not willing to come out and give a definitive answer really, and you can kind of tell by the way that she's trying to get out of this question that, she doesn't want to say the quiet part out loud or just come out and admit that she doesn't want to support Biden 2024, but that also does, deserve somewhat pushback, because I do think that somewhat leftist lawmakers like Cori Bush, AOC, Ilhan Omar, the rest of the squad and such, that they should be willing to come out in a moment like this and just say, no, of course he shouldn't fucking win. Of course he shouldn't run. And that shouldn't be controversial because, listen, we know the polling data on this. We just got a new poll here from CNN just out. I think this was actually today or yesterday. CNN poll, 75% of Democratic voters want someone other than Biden in 2024. So if you, as Cori Bush, were to come out, everybody already knows that you're a leftist. You're already facing a significant degree of heat from the Democratic establishment. Just come out and say it. You would be perfectly in line with a vast majority of the rest of the Democratic Party, who is, makes up the base that actually supports more leftist policies like what Cori Bush supports as well. So there's no real reason, in my mind at least, that leftist representatives in Congress shouldn't just be coming out and actively pushing Biden to not run in 2024. Even if he did run and he, somehow pulled off a miracle win against Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, which I don't think would happen, but even if he did somehow pull off that win, then you're left with another 4 goddamn years of what we've been seeing from Joe Biden so far, which has been absolutely pathetic. No urgency whatsoever, no ability to fight for any of even his half-assed, watered-down neoliberal agenda items, let alone any of the actual policy priorities that we believe in and people like Cori Bush believe in, like Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, etc. So there's nothing you would even gain from getting Joe Biden back in the White House in 2024 other than potentially staving off a fascist takeover of the country temporarily. But you need to get Joe Biden out of this position. You need to, have somebody primary him, have somebody run in an open primary in 2024. Absolutely don't let it be Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg coming out on the other side of that. But you got to have somebody else come in, not only to beat Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, depending on who runs, but to then actually govern in a way that delivers for average working class people. So you shouldn't be afraid to just come out and say this at this point, because again, the overwhelming majority of the American people would agree with you. But just to get into some more details on what this polling data was showing, they say a new CNN poll finds that 75% of Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters want the party to nominate someone other than President Joe Biden for the 2024 election, a sharp increase from earlier this year. And the poll comes as Biden's approval rating remains low, and most Americans are disconnected with the state of the country and the economy, discontented. And inflation remains at a high, and a new report released Tuesday showed consumer confidence slipped for the 3rd straight month. And this is something that Biden has been absolutely atrocious on in terms of handling inflation. He comes out and he's willing to, on a very rare occasion, use the rhetoric and call out the corporations that are responsible for huge disproportionate amounts of inflation via corporate price gouging. But in terms of actual policies to crack down on the billion-dollar oil and gas companies or any number of other, food food producers or otherwise that are price gouging the American people. There's been basically nothing. So, in terms of actually solving the economic reasons why Joe Biden's approval rating has been crashing recently, or, to potentially provide some economic relief so that Democrats don't get clobbered in the midterms, he's been doing basically nothing on that. And in fact, it's gotten to a position where it's just really pathetic at this point. So here from Fox News, they're pointing out that there was a CNN panel where they were rejecting Biden's White House, the Biden White House's attempt to spin the definition of recession. So, in terms of what I know as of, what constitutes a recession, obviously there's going to be somewhat of a disagreement on the specific definitions of that, but it seems like where our economy is heading right now, certainly average working class people are feeling a recessionary effect. They're feeling the pressure of inflation, and we've had, significant indicators like, low GDP growth or negative GDP growth that would be somewhat, accurate previous definitions of recessions based on how it's previously been defined. But Joe Biden coming out and refusing to accept the fact that we are at least headed for a recession if we're not already in a recession, which is just completely fucking pathetic, because your priority right now shouldn't be on pushing back the narrative that there's going to be a recession. Your priority should be on delivering material benefits to average working class people so that that inflationary pressure is not put on their backs, so that they have some semblance of relief. And according to the current Fed policy that Jerome Powell is trying to put forward right now as well, it's just absolutely atrocious. I mean, we had, a pandemic that devastated working class people, followed by huge stimulus in, basically loopholes that were allowed for huge stimulus to go to some of the most profitable corporations in the country, who then turned around, used a lot of that money on executive pay and stock buybacks, and still laid off huge portions of their workforce. Working people got screwed in that instance as well. You had some semblance of relief in the form of stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, the child tax credit, etc. But pretty much all of that at this point has dried up. And now we're in a situation where the Federal Reserve is deploying a policy which Jerome Powell himself admitted when he was questioned by Senator Elizabeth Warren on it, said that it would not lower gas prices or food prices, which are like two of the main inflationary pressures that average working class people are facing right now. So they're deploying this policy from the Fed to raise interest rates, to make it more expensive to try to get in the housing market, more expensive to try to take out loans on cars and other things. And all this is going to do is result in companies slashing jobs, cutting wages, pushing down working class people, which is something, again, Jerome Powell openly admitted that the Federal Reserve's goal is to tamp down wages. So they're not going after the wealthiest, 0.1% or 1% within the economy, which, just as a reminder on some of the basic facts of that, the top 1% in this country owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. And yet the Joe Biden administration, along with Republicans, is basically pushing the narrative, or at least tacitly accepting the narrative, that instead of it being the fault of the 1% that controls vast disproportionate amounts of wealth in this country, instead of it being their fault for causing inflation via corporate price gouging and the like, they're putting it on the backs of working class people and pushing austerity at a time where, we were just starting to see some semblance of a resurgence of the American labor movement. So top to bottom, Biden's economic policy response to inflation, as it has been taking off recently over the last couple of months, has just been completely nonsense. I mean, it's nothing that is going to benefit him politically, nothing that is going to benefit average people economically, and it's not even getting to the core root problems of why we are having inflation in the first place right now, or why we're heading for a recession. So it's completely incoherent. But no surprises here why Joe Biden's approval rating and his support within the Democratic Party is doing so atrociously right now. But they give a little bit more details here on the polling data, saying 24% of Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters said that they want someone else because they don't think Biden can win in 2024. I also don't think that he could win, and that's up from 18% in a poll conducted in January and February. 32% feel that way because they don't want Biden to be reelected, up from 16%, so nearly or exactly doubling that number. And 25% said that they prefer Biden as the nominee, which is a steep drop from 45% in January/February. So basically, back towards the beginning of 2022, Biden had roughly like half of the Democratic Party who would supported him for a 2024 re-election bid. Now that's down to only a quarter of Democrats. So obviously what has happened over the last year or during 2022 true that has led to this? I mean, pretty much goddamn nothing. It's the fact that the Biden administration, the Democratic Party, hasn't been able to get anything substantive done so that people feel the relief from a lot of that economic pressure that's coming from inflation. But they continue here saying the poll shows a sharp downturn in enthusiasm for a 2024 re-election bid by the president. In January and February, 51% of Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters said they wanted someone other than Biden to be the Democratic nominee in 2024. And now contrast this with somebody like Donald Trump and his support within the Republican Party. They say the poll showed a majority of Republican and Republican-leaning registered voters say that they do not want former President Donald Trump to be their party's nominee in 2024. 55% said that they want to see someone else other than Trump to be the nominee, which is up from 49% in January, February, basically the same. But look at the difference here. I mean, it is a majority of Republicans saying they would prefer that Donald Trump doesn't run in 2024, but that's only 55%, so that's roughly half, whereas Biden's support within the Democratic Party is almost a full 25% or 20% at least gap there between him and Donald Trump. So in other words, Donald Trump has more support within the Republican Party than Joe Biden has support within the Democratic Party right now, which is absolutely fucking embarrassing, especially considering you have the context of the January 6th committee hearings and Trump and his various lackeys getting absolutely trashed on a day-to-day basis. You have the added context of Joe Biden and his party having control of the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the presidency, and yet he's more unpopular than even Donald Trump within their respective parties. So, I mean, it's just an absolute joke of a situation right now, and I think, again, representatives like Cori Bush should be willing to come out at this point and just say, no, he shouldn't run. Of course he shouldn't run. He hasn't done a good job at being this, bipartisan, effective legislature that he said he was going to be. He's been a complete failure. The American people are obviously not having it. He has record levels of disapproval among the American people, record levels of low support within the Democratic Party. There's no goddamn justification whatsoever for Joe Biden to think that he deserves to run in 2024 or that he could win in 2024. So if you actually cared about beating Republicans, if you care about pushing back against their fascist right-wing reactionary takeover of the country, then you wouldn't have Joe Biden be the face of the party. You would have him step down, preferably even before the 2024 election. I would like to see him step down. Maybe then you could have Kamala finish off his presidency and tank the any prospects that she has left of running in 2024 herself. And then we can maybe have somebody else step in line. Who that could potentially be, I don't really know. Maybe Bernie Sanders. He's a billion fucking years old at this point, but he would have a better chance than Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg. Maybe you could get somebody like John Fetterman to pull off a run. I don't know. There's a lot of different names that we could be throwing around here, but none of those names included in potential primary elections or the presidential election in 2024. None of them should be Joe Biden.